not even take my 5 minutes. I'm just going to sit back and say to you folks, I think we have a great city in Virginia Beach. I go across this city, this state, and this country telling it's the greatest city in the world. I truly believe that in my heart. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it stays that way. I think the way it stays there is to make sure we have a good school system. We have funded schools. I'm proud of it. It should continue. And I'm happy to say that, you know, we've been hearing fund more, well, the teachers are supporting, the VDEA is supporting it. And that should say a lot as far as if I'm truly supporting the school system. They are endorsing it. As I sit back and talk about public-private partnerships, the first one we did was the Virginia Beach Amphitheater. $8 million was put in by Celador, $10 million was put in by the city of Virginia Beach. It averaged in direct tax revenue $1.4 million annually. Direct tax revenue is no multiplier. It's from the ticket sales tax and the food and beverage tax that it generates. I say to you that we paid for that, our $10 million investment in 8 years. And now every penny of that goes into the general fund. You look at what just happened at Lynn Haven Mall. We did a TIF to build a park around. Well, guess what happened just a couple of months ago? The TIF is paid for. Now the $1.5 million that was being used for debt service on that property goes right into the general fund. And don't forget, that $1.5 million was generated basically by the real estate tax of Lynn Haven Mall. We just didn't get the additional tax revenue until this TIF was paid off. We maintained what we had, but we didn't get the additional until it was paid off. I sit back and say to you, we must have a safe city. And we've got one of the safest cities. And for that is working, we're going into communities. I told you we're out in the western part of Bayside, working in Lake Edward. 4 years ago, we started this partnership with churches in the city and the nonprofits working together with the community. It's a model now. We're going into another part of the city where they've had some issues that were out here not long ago. And for that, I think we're showing that we're reaching out to the community and making it a better place to live for all. I want everybody in this city to feel like they're safe. I want everyone in this city to be well educated, and I want everyone to have fun. And I tell you, I think we do it at a pretty fair cost. I thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine our elected officials wanting to raise and add new taxes during the worst economic times, putting a bigger burden on all of us? That is just not right. But that is what they just did. Not once, not twice, but 3 times in a year. One of the only cities in the country to do that to its people. And we the people can't let that stand. As I mentioned to you earlier, my lovely wife's been teaching school for over 30 years. And I'm well aware of the excellent education system that we have in Virginia Beach. But I do not believe the school board should have been penalized for being fiscally responsible. And that will not happen under my watch. Some nights I lay awake in amazement. For example, some of our elected officials would have us believe that spending over $1 billion on a choo-choo train that might service 5,000 to 10,000 people per day, when we have over $1.2 billion in unfunded road projects that would serve over 430,000 people per day, is okay. Well, it is not. One of our state senators was recently quoted, and I quote, "Light rail is a bad business plan, and we just can't afford it." And I agree with him. They cannot help themselves. They love to recklessly spend our tax dollars on special interest groups instead of the common good of all the people. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to turn the wheel of the car back over to you now for you to make a choice of continuing on a road where the signs say out of control spending, higher taxes and fees, special interest, conflicts of interest, and yes to light rail. Or going on a road where the signs say controlled spending, no new taxes and fees, quality education, no conflicts of interest, and no to light rail. Ladies and gentlemen, it boils down to this. On November 6th, you have a choice of continuing to support the special interest mayor or voting for the people's mayor, Richard R.K. Kowalewicz. Please visit my website at www.rkformayor.com. Remember, this election is your election, and I will work for you. Thank you very much.
Here's my sign, wallyformayor.com. That's how you find out about me. I'm really a little disappointed I'm going to shoot out because I didn't hear any of the things other than money. Maybe we've just come a little bit too affluent for ourselves. We didn't talk about affordable housing. We didn't talk about a livable wage. You know, the mayor indicated that, well, you know, we got a great unemployment rate in this city. It's really good. Why? Because it's seasonal, it's tourist, and they're minimum wage jobs. Did you try to live on a minimum wage? No. That's all, you know, that's all beyond us, it seems like. We didn't talk about education in the regard that maybe there's somebody out there in a disadvantaged area that needs, what's the word I want to use? An apprenticeship. And maybe some of the contracts that the city awards can specify a salary that's above the federal minimum wage. You can do that. I told me back here you can do that. Yeah, anything that's contracted. And maybe we can have those incentives. You know, I didn't hear the B-poll tax. That's another one that goes on. You know, B-poll, we set the rate in the city, and we can set all kinds of incentives to business if they take on disadvantaged youth and help. We have a lot of that in this city. You don't want to know it. You get in a cab, ask a cab driver, he'll tell you. You can go out there in Virginia Beach and you can see them living in plastic huts that you put on your clothes when you get them from the dry cleaners. We have that. Now we're going to talk about signs. Yeah, where's my sign? Well, there. I'm a little angry because you didn't talk about these important issues. And you know, I'm a kind of older guy. Maybe when you get older, you become a little more benevolent. I am putting signs up. I'm not, excuse me, New York is coming out. I'm not putting signs up because it's a waste of money. It doesn't beautify our city. And now with all the wind going on, they're going to be flipping and flopping all over the air. So I'm going to implant a picture in your mind that maybe you can have a little bit of evidence. If it affects one person, it's important. But I want you to think of that 4x8 sign as a family, and all those little signs as a child. And the cost of putting up one of those signs could give nourishment to a hungry family that's here in Virginia Beach for a week. And that little sign, in our church we fill up backpacks. It's called, Don, what do they call it?
It was.
Yeah, it was our program. Because the kids get school lunches that are hungry, but when they go home for the weekend, they don't have that. They're out there starving. And we fill a backpack and we bring it over to the school. But one of those little signs can give nourishment to one of those kids. So when you drive down that road, I want you to think hunger and what the money is going. And if you got big money and you're going to invest it into these campaigns, it's about a return on investment. It's about accessibility. It's about getting special favors. And if you have nominal contributions that you want to give to them, give it to the food bank. Give it to the Samaritan house. That's doing good. But all of this here glitz and these little things that you have on your job, you can get it on the internet. Oh, let me tell you. WallyForMayor.com. That's the name of the tune. Make ourselves a benevolent society, and let's get together and have a homogeneous society. That's what Virginia Beach is about. Volunteerism and caring about everybody else. Thank you.
Everyone that has come out, including those from us. The citizens' goal for tonight's candidate forum are as follows. Citizens seek to know the candidates, your level of knowledge about the issues facing citizens in our city government. We seek to know your vision to address the issues. Lastly, you're the rank. We, the citizens, seek to gain some insight into your fiscal responsibility and how you would implement your vision and the impacts on the city budget. In other words, how would you pay for your vision and changes in Virginia Beach? The format of the forum is as follows. We have 3 sections to the candidate forum. Opening remarks, which will be 3 minutes for each candidate. Then we enter into a question and answer section, and we will have 1 minute for the candidates to answer the question. We will end with 3-minute closing remarks depending upon the time. I would like to stretch that to 5 minutes to give the candidates ample opportunity to discuss further some of their viewpoints and positions. Catherine Lee will keep us on time as she has the stopwatch. The yellow card signifies you have 15 seconds left in your comments. And when you see the red card, I respectfully request that you stop. All stop. We will start with the 3-minute opening statements. We will go in alphabetical order. Wally will start, followed by RK and Will Sessions. Don't wait for my cue, but go one after the other. And then the question and answer section, we'll have RK start off, and then we'll end with closing remarks, starting with Will Sessions and working in reverse. So, Wally, go ahead and start.
And you've got the mic there. You have to share the microphone. It's always on.
Good evening. Good to see everybody here tonight. You can't hear me because of the rain. It sounds pretty bad back here. This is my sign. It says Wally for mayor.com. You need to go there if you want to find out about Wally Burr, because you're not sitting on any brochures. I don't believe in those type of frivolity. I'm kind of a stipend kind of guy. We're going to talk about some issues, and I know a lot of people wrap around taxes and they're wrapped around light rail. But I'm going to throw this out because there are important issues in Virginia Beach that we also need to talk about, so maybe somebody could bring those up. One is education in the way of what we can do in the way of getting young people into work by enhancing maybe an apprenticeship program for the contracts that the city has. And another issue is called the living wage, where we can extend beyond the federal laws as it comes to minimum wage, because on minimum wage a lot of people just can't survive. And of course we need to talk about the elderly, and we need to talk about affordable housing. Sometimes those things get lost, so I bring them up in the beginning so that we can discuss them later. I hope that you kind of understand that we're all types of different and all different and have different ideologies, but I respect these two gentlemen here, and they're both capable of doing the job. Not as much as me, but they are capable, and I feel that way because I'm biased. But I want to make you several promises, because a lot of people need to know promises. And when it comes to voting, you can't promise because you won vote. But I can make specific promises, and I'll do that. So you can. So I know that I can gain your trust. Entrust me with these promises so I can get your trust. One is I believe in an open and transparent government, and I will maintain daily operating hours in the mayor's office there and open door policy. Second, I will spend sufficient time in Richmond during the General Assembly session to walk up and down the halls to make sure that in our region, in our city, we're getting our due from our legislators. Number three, I'm going to foster relationships with the neighboring cities. We're in competition with our neighboring cities. We don't care where the lines are. Government cares where the lines are. When you drive into Norfolk, you drive into Portsmouth. It's not like going down the 50-yard line and see a demarcation line. We all live here and we're all one community. But I consider that I'm in a very good position in that I can, I have a significant strength, and I'm financially unencumbered. And I have all the sufficient time to do the job. And I'm willing to put forth that effort and all my energies to doing the best job for you. Thank you very much.
How's everybody doing this evening? We have a little echo in the back and a lot of rain coming down this metal roof, evidently. My name is Richard R.K. Kowalowicz, and I'm running to be your next mayor of the city of Virginia Beach. My lovely wife Dorothy's been a school teacher for over 30 years, and I've been a local business owner for the last 29 years. I want to get started with one simple question. Are you happy with the way the current mayor and certain city council members have managed the city's business? More importantly, your tax dollars. I know that all elections are important, but the upcoming election in November is crucial. Why? Because I believe the current mayor, who is a banker, and certain city council members have went down a road that's headed in the wrong direction. They went down a road with their eyes and ears covered, so they really can't see what's best for Virginia Beach anymore, or hear the voices of you, the people. They're driving along oblivious to the rules of the road and what's important to each and every one of us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to stop that car and turn it around. It's time to point that car in the right direction so that all the taxpayers of Virginia Beach can feel safe and secure in the future. And that is why I felt driven to run to be your next mayor. I believe there are 5 major issues in this campaign important to each and every one of us. Out of control spending, taxes, education, conflicts of interest, and light rail. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to make a choice of continuing on the road where the signs say out of control spending, higher taxes and fees, special interest, conflicts of interest, and yes to light rail. Or going on a road where the signs say controlled spending, no new taxes and fees, quality education, no conflicts of interest, and no to light rail. Ladies and gentlemen, it boils down to this. On November 6th, you have a choice of continuing to support the special interest mayor or voting for the people's mayor, Richard R.K. Kowalowicz. Thank you.
Good evening. And let me just start by saying this has been an absolute honor for me to have the opportunity to serve as your mayor for the last 4 years. For a guy that's lived here his entire life and loved this city so much, to have this honor means so much to me. For that, I'm very grateful. I would sit back and say to you, did not pick a great time to become mayor. Worst economic crisis in the country's history occurred, and I will look you straight in the eye and tell you I think we've done very well getting through it. I would sit back and tell you that unemployment is the lowest in Virginia Beach at 5.6%, which is the lowest in the state and lowest for a city our size nationally. I take great pride in that. If you sit back and look at the 7 regions in this city, there are a few cities that have some AAA bond ratings, but not all 3 rating agencies give them to them. Virginia Beach has a AAA bond rating from all 3 rating agencies, even in this terrible economic time. I take great pride in that. We live in a safe neighborhood. You just heard your crime report come up, and I was glad to hear that it was a slow summer. I take great pride in supporting our police department and making sure that this community is safe. I've had the pleasure of working out in the western part of Bayside, working in the Lake Edward neighborhood. Basically, after I got elected mayor, I've taken a big interest in that, and I assure you, things are much better in the western part of Bayside than they were 4 years ago. I'm proud of what's occurring in that neighborhood. That neighborhood is partnering with churches and the city and really stepping out and getting the job done. Now, what have I done for education? We've put $2.6 billion in education in the last 4 years, which we should do. We must make sure that the city of Virginia Beach continues to be a well-educated community. And by doing that, I hope you know that America has selected Virginia Beach school system as the 5th best in the country. I said the 5th best school system in the country. And I'm very proud of that as well. Then, don't forget, we've been selected as the best city, 2nd best city to raise a family in the country. The 2nd best city to raise a family in the country. And don't forget, 24/7 Wall Street named us the best managed city in the country. Again, during some terrible economic times. I'm very, very proud. I'll look everyone in the eye and say, I don't think we've ever had a better relationship with the military than we do today. I take great pride that that's the situation. I've had the opportunity of making great friends in the military in the last 4 years. Regrettably, Admiral Harvey has just retired, but we've made new good friends, and we will continue the relationship. When BRAC comes, we will be prepared. We'll be on the offense and not the defense, and I look forward to talking about other great things in our great city that each and every one of us do to make this city what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening comments. We'll now move into the first set of questions. The first set will be based on leadership. And we'll start with RK. If elected as our mayor, describe to the audience your view on the responsibilities and roles of local government in terms of where do these roles end and the roles of the private sector begin.
Wow.
That's a good question to start off with. Well, I believe that, first of all, that we're here to work for you. That is our job. We're to make sure our city is safe and our children are educated and our infrastructure is taken care of. I do not believe the role of government is to pick winners and losers, as we've been doing in the past. The private sector is supposed to take care of that. Government's supposed to take care of the three important things. Number one is safety, number two is education, and then infrastructure. The rest of it's left up to the private sector. I believe in a level playing field for all citizens and businesses, and that's how I'll run this government. And I also will run it transparently. There will be no backroom deals. Everybody will know what's going on at all times. Thank you.
Well, I think you were getting at, do I support public-private partnerships? And let me sit back and say to you, a number of years ago when I was on council, the properties surrounding town center, even when things were pretty good, the valuations of those properties were going down, okay? I venture to say to you, the public-private partnership that we started at town center has been an absolute great success and caused the properties around it to increase in value and be more successful. That being said, at the end of the year, after all the debt service is made on the parking ramps and the infrastructure that was paid for by the city nets in its general fund about $3 to $4 million, right to the general fund, absolute fact. It generates a little over 6.7, but the bottom line is that some of that goes into different pots of money that are used for tourism and things like that. But it nets $3 to $4 million in the general fund for schools and everything else that we want to have the best in the city.
I find it interesting that when we talked about leadership, all of a sudden we talked about money. You know, Virginia Beach and its neighbors in the different city have to become a homogeneous type society. It's not about splitting people between other people. It's about a leadership that gets people together, where businesses are working with citizens, and citizens are working with the underfortunate, so we can have a common goals and go to the future. One of the most important things that we need to do, and that we had before and we've seen to be falling off, is the great volunteerism that we used to have in the city. We need somebody that's going to go out there and stimulate different areas to get that volunteerism getting going. And that's what instructs our younger people, to have those role models, to be a helping hand, to get out there and have a homogeneous society, and that's what leadership is about. Sometimes we just get wrapped around too much about money, and then we just kind of go after that island of money. It's about people helping people.
Well, your response was to answer question number 2, but I'll give you the opportunity to respond to question number 1, which is, what is the responsibility and role of local government? Where does it end? And where does the private sector begin?
To me, it is what I believe I did when I became mayor. One of the first things I did, I went out to the Lake Everett community and worked with that community. I also went out to meet with the military leadership and established wonderful relationships with them. I've sat back and done everything I can to reach out to the community and listen to the citizens. I've formed roundtables that I meet with on a regular basis, representing people all throughout the city, and I found it to be very beneficial. So I think the key thing is to be reaching out to the people in this community, listening to them, and then making tough decisions.
The question is, describe to the audience your position on private-public partnerships and projects in economic development, whether they are good or bad, and to what level of city commitment. What should be the level of city commitment? That means the taxpayers have to pay the public part of the partnership.
Are you asking if the current public projects the city's involved in or future projects?
Future.
You don't want me to talk about. First of all, I don't think it's the government's responsibility to go in business to compete against the private sector. I've never seen anywhere in the Constitution, either in the federal, the state, or in the city charter, that allows the government to compete against the private sector. In the city of Virginia Beach right now, we have like businesses collecting a tax to generate their own competition. Most people don't know that. That's just not right. Government has the right to pick winners and losers so you can contribute big dollars to political campaigns and then you can get what you want. That's just not right. That will never happen under my watch. I promise you that. It'll be a level playing field for all businesses. Government has a responsibility, and it's not picking winners and losers.
Guess we got some supporters for Arcadia that came along with them. Public-private partnerships, you know, that's a broad brush. I guess what a lot of people are talking about the big erections that we have around the city. Those are kind of, you know, I don't like to be leveraged in that regard. But, you know, public-private partnerships are a different sort. You know, when we encourage minority businesses and give them a helping hand, or small business and give them a business loan, that's public-private partnership also, because they got to pay it back. But I think in this instance, you're talking about the big projects and the unlevel playing field. Everything has to be looked at a case-by-case basis. There's no one white side, one black side. There's shades of gray. There are some things that the community needs, and then the legal financing. Of course, it should be level playing field. Everybody should assume that. And that's the only subjection that we're saying these things here. But what's important is that each case-by-case basis is there. Oh, sorry, I didn't see the red flag.
While they hang on to the microphone, you have the next question.
I apologize.
If elected, describe your role, if any, on the Hamilton Roads Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO. What role should the mayor play in that organization, what we call the MPO?
Yeah, that's important. Now, that's a regional system. Again, I believe in regional cooperation to make sure that we have that flow of information. You know, it's so important to understand that not everybody who works in Virginia Beach, and we do have a good unemployment figure here, good employment figure, they live in other places. They live in Suffolk, they live in Portsmouth, they live in all different areas. They need to get to work and need to get on time. Conversely, people that live in Virginia Beach need to go to Norfolk, they need to go to the other side. So it only behooves us to be integral with all the transportation that needs to be there. And you gotta build these relationships. But most importantly, you gotta have the time. If you got a big job, you got a big business, you got a big family, how much time can you devote to do that? And that's the big important thing, to have the time to foster these relationships and get the region together when it comes to transportation and MPO. Can you say when it goes? Because thanks.
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not familiar with the organization, but I think if we're talking about regionalism as far as cooperation between the cities, that's a great thing to happen so the cities can save costs by combining road projects that we're talking about. But let me just say something to you. I'm not sitting on city council right now. I'm running to be on city council. The current budget is out of my control, but I can promise you this, once January comes, you can rest assured I will be on it and be on it hard, and you will be safe with me. I can promise you that. And all along the way, it's going to be open and transparent to you what's going on with your money, because it is your money.
The MPO is now the TPO, Transportation Planning Organization for Hampton Roads. I just recently chaired it for the first time in the region's history. We, as a region, the cities on the peninsula and on the south side, voted unanimously in prioritizing road projects. This has never happened before. I would sit back and say to you again, I'm very proud of the relationship we have with our neighboring cities now. It's better than it's ever been. That was historic, to have every city agree on that prioritization, and I was chairing it when it occurred.
Next question. This question relates to this area MPO. And RK, you respond first. The question is, and it's a rather long question from a citizen, so listen carefully. Several years ago, a federal audit found the MPO conditionally certified with some 26 regional transportation planning management procedures needing attention. In your view, what causes adverse findings, and what do you think should be done to improve our regional performance? That is, if you think the mayor should be involved.
Well, again, it goes past my pay grade at this point, but obviously the mayor should be involved. There's no doubt about that. So, I mean, when that opportunity arises for me, I will be involved. I mean, I'll be involved the best I can, but I'm not going to sit up here and pretend and have all the answers. I've not been on council for 22 years. 18, sorry. I apologize. But anyway.
You're older than I am.
You're not that old. But anyway, I promise you this, once these situations arise and we get into that, obviously I'm going to be involved in it more than I can tell you about right now, because I'll be honest with you, I don't want to sit here and blow smoke. I'm not going to do that because I don't feel it's right to do. But I promise you, it's not important right now, I can tell you that. It'll be important in January. Thank you.
Well, here's a reality check. It's Richmond. You know, it used to be when people used to develop what needs and transportation you needed, it had to do with road engineers and people figuring those things out. But it's gotten as such, now it has to be the legislature got to have favors for those individual people. So more often than not, these road projects are dictated by Richmond and who's got the pull up there in the legislature. And that's what really happens. And that's why it's very important that we have representation during the General Assembly period to go around there and beat on the doors of the assistants to get to talk to the legislature, especially in the western part of the state where there's no one of interest, and get those things done and get them resolved. It comes from Richmond, that's the way it goes, and it comes back down here. Thank you very much.
The issues you just raised were very bad issues. They've been fixed. We're at model TPO now. That has been done through an audit recently. The issue with money is we didn't have prioritization of these projects, and we sent 15 different projects to make everyone happy so they supported in each city and town. Bottom line is, when we prioritized, we got more money. We got the money that was available, and the governor was very proud of us. He commended us, and I think rewarded us for being able to build the Leslie Bridge, which is $110 million, which we had no money for that a year ago. We got it now, and it's because of the prioritization of road projects and being recognized in Richmond that we did it.
The purpose of the question is the degree of leadership that you feel needs to be done for this area. And MPO is a very important entity, and Mr. Sessoms highlighted some of that importance. So that's why I bring up the question, is to ascertain your level of knowledge. You may not have that knowledge now, but we expect, as the mayor, to provide the leadership to lead this area, because Virginia Beach is the largest city in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we need that leadership to carry the area to Richmond.
Absolutely.
Next question is, in light of the discussions on road tolls in Richmond, do you support reestablishing tolls on I-264, and why? Will, you want to start with that?
Well, frankly, I'm not a toll person, but it's the only means we have for financing road projects. I do not support tolling 264. I sit back and say to you, if we're going to build roads, it should be through the gas tax or sales tax. And I hope everyone knows in 2017, if the Secretary of the Commonwealth, if the Secretary of Transportation were here today, he would tell you there's no money for road construction as of 2017. It is all gone. And so we got to work with our friends. I'm not here to point fingers with our friends in Richmond, but we must work with our friends in Richmond to find funds to provide a good transportation system for not only Virginia Beach, but for Hampton Roads and the Commonwealth of Virginia. Military readiness is in question, as is a major economic development problem.
Well, I'm not supportive of tolls either. But I think the bigger issue is, Will's right, the money's drying up in the state and it's drying up in the federal side as well. That means more of the burdens can be put on the local localities to make up that difference. That's why it's more important now than ever that we control spending and not get involved in projects that we shouldn't be involved in. That is a big issue down the road, and we need to consider that, like the arena deals and hotel deals and light rail. We need to really consider that because, remember, in the city we have $1.6 billion in unfunded road projects. We need to be careful about that. We're not going to get the money from the state and feds as we once did. So we need to be very conscious about our monies.
Oh, okay. I'm not a supporter of tolls either, and I really believe that the gas tax is the way to go. But I do have reservations with the gas tax because now we have a more efficient vehicle. I got a smart car myself, so it doesn't use much. And I really believe that we should probably go to compressed natural gas engines, and like a lot of other cities do, we'll save a lot of money that way. So maybe in the future, you know, what comes in the future? Do we have to have some type of thing on mileage? But I don't believe tolls are the way to go. It hasn't really ever worked, and there's always a way of getting around the tolls. And on 264, people are going to be going down Virginia Beach Boulevard and really kind of have congested periods during peak hours. So it doesn't pay to have them on 264.
Probably the question that is most on citizens' mind is the one on light rail in the oceanfront arena. The following set of questions gets to your position on where is the line between taxpayers and developers? That is, the public sector and the private sector. The question is, what is your position on extending Norfolk's light rail line to town center or to the oceanfront? Wally?
Well, of course you understand that that's a referendum that's going to be in November, and I'm not going to be very non-committal. I personally, because of the operating costs, feel that light rail is not feasible, isn't feasible because of the operating costs. But that's my opinion. You know, everybody has their own opinion. You vote the way you want. I don't want to influence anybody's opinion. But my concern is, what if it passes? What are we going to do? Well, of course, you have to have a plan. And my plan is to start at the bare minimum. And bare minimum is to town center. One will connect the two business centers in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. And number two, we're not going to extend out beyond that because, you know, Rosemont Road, Lynn Haven Road, at peak hours, when you have the entrance and the egress of those areas during peak hours, we're going to be chock-a-block in traffic. You're not going to move. It's bad now. It'll even be worse when you have light rail. So as a start, to see if it's feasible to extend it to the town center, if it passes.
Do I got to answer this? I personally, as a citizen and as a business owner, I'm not for light rail. First of all, the big issue for me is we just can't afford it. That's just the bottom line. In these economic times, in the future, we don't know what's going to happen. We can't afford to spend over $1 billion on a choo-choo train. So I mean, and by the way, what is it accomplishing? It's not taking any traffic off the roads. I'll give you a perfect example. Sacramento is about 99 square miles. City of Virginia Beach is around 300 square miles. Sacramento's budget for light rail and buses is $158 million. I believe in our budget this year for buses, we have $5 million in it. Do we really want to do this to ourselves in the bad economic times? We're running short $60 million for next year's budget already. We need to revalue this. But first of all, I'm for the referendum. Let me tell you what, my construction experience, if light rail is approved and the citizens want it, it'll be most helpful. We won't go through what Norfolk went through. I can promise you that, because I will be out there with a hard hat on making sure it doesn't happen. That is for sure.
I support the referendum, but the referendum, if approved, does three things. It allows us to do a thorough analysis, it allows us to have public input, and it allows us to see if the federal money's there. If the federal money's there, I feel like we can bring light rail to town center. I think it would be a good trial place to take it to. I agree with Wally on that, and I really think that it'll be most successful if we have that opportunity. But the approval of the referendum does not guarantee light rail coming, but it does allow us to do the analysis, get public input, and see if the federal money's there. Remember what I just said. There's no more money for roads in 2017. There is some federal money available today for rail. I suggest we go grab it if it's there.
Next question is, if the November referendum supports the extension of light rail to Virginia Beach, what do you propose on how to fund it, keeping in mind the referendum is an advisory? How do you propose to fund light rail if the referendum is voted up?
I had a phone call earlier today from Santa Claus of the North Pole. He told me this. He said he's not going to bring it underneath the Christmas tree, and you are going to have to buy it yourself. And that is the problem. There is no money for light rail. There is none. And by the way, I don't know this, but maybe Will, you can help me here. Is federal taxes? Isn't it taxes that we pay?
Yep, and I'd rather have them spent here than another state.
I would not want any of our taxes wasted anywhere, either state or federal, anywhere, because we're hurting on the federal side, we're hurting on the state side, and we're hurting on the local side. So let's not waste our tax dollars on frivolous projects.
Your supporters. Let's face facts. Let's be truthful. If it passes, you're going to have a tax increase. And that's what the people of Virginia Beach have to realize, that it's going to be an 80% subsidized transit system, and it's going to require a tax increase. Now, if that's what the people of Virginia Beach elect they want to do, that's the name of the game. And all we have to figure out is what the deal is. And I think we have to understand that there's a methodology also. We don't know if right now it was grant money. It may be about payback loan, and we may not be able to afford that. And we'll probably, if the referendum passes, have to table it until there is grant money available. But if it passes, it's a tax increase, and it should be in the real estate tax.
Well, you want to answer that?
I'll be glad to. The first thing, has Norfolk raised taxes because of light rail? The answer is no. How are they paying for it? Because they've had increased valuations of real estate along the line. Go look there and see the high-rises that have been built around that line. This is a sign that light rail will allow for redevelopment and people will invest around it. The funding for light rail, though, to have it built, I agree with Wally. If the federal money's not there, it won't be able to be done. Norfolk has about 80% of the funding for light rail in Norfolk was federal and state money. I'd also sit back and say to you that we shouldn't expect the complications that Norfolk had because they had to go under old roads and things like that. Virginia Beach bought the rail line, and there was rail on there, so it should be a bit easier for us, and I don't expect the cost overruns.
Hang on to that mic, Will. If light rail gets the votes on city council for approval, would you support or mandate construction of bridges over major traffic corridors such as Wichita, Independence, Rosemont, Lynn Haven, First Colonial? If you support this, how would you pay for it and at what cost?
Well, certainly we're not going to run the rail line through Independence Boulevard, Wichita Road. I would not be supportive of anything that would hold up the traffic along those lines. Again, that gets into the construction cost. And the cost estimate that I've heard from Newtown Road to town centers in the neighborhood of $250 million. I also gather, in talking to some people in the private sector, that they can come in perhaps do it cheaper. But it will be funded from federal and state money with some local money. But if the federal and state money is there to bring at least 75 to 80% of the cost, I don't foresee light rail happening.
Sticking to my position, we just can't afford it, ladies and gentlemen. Now we want to build bridges. How much do you think that's going to cost? That's sure not cheap, I can tell you that. And let me tell you something I'm a little confused on. And I believe the city assessment on the light rail right-of-way was about $44 million, was it not? Why do we pay $40 million for it?
You just said it's 44.
Was it $44 million?
That's what you just said.
No. We paid $40 million for a piece of property that was assessed at $4 million. And we're not going to follow Norfolk's footsteps? I think we already did.
What was the last question?
The question is, if light rail gets the vote on city council, in other words, we're past the
I got it,
referendum.
the overpasses.
Right.
Gotta have them. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, it's a chock-a-block right now. It's gotta be there. Yeah, it's expensive. That's why I'm voting no, but I don't want to influence you. It's up to you. You gotta realize you gotta pay the piper when you want these things. And I kind of, you know, the comparison to Norfolk and Virginia Beach, that's apples to oranges. We're not Norfolk. We're Virginia Beach. It's a whole lot different. And the other thing is that, you know, we paid $40 million for right-of-way. Norfolk didn't pay anything for it. So that's the problem. So we're making up the money. And the other thing is on the HRT, we don't know the revenue sharing basis for the line that when comes into Virginia Beach. Now, we're both, Virginia Beach and Norfolk, are going to pay for that. Who's going to pay the brunt of it, and how is it going to be ascertained and determined? That's an unknown also. So there's a lot of unknowns right now because the study is not complete, and also, can we really make a good decision on this vote? And that's why I have my position, but everybody has their own.
Okay, hang on to that mic, and yeah, there's another question on light rail. We're hammering it away because it is complex, and the citizens must understand and not be glossed over with marketing. It's a rather long question from a citizen. Listen carefully. It is widely accepted that government-run businesses cannot match the efficiencies of the private sector. As mayor, would you consider selling the rail corridor to a company or group of companies that would own, build, and operate a light rail system for profit, thus taking the city and the residents out of the railroad business? Wally?
I don't think you can find one. I mean, that's really arbitrary. It's a subjective question, and I don't think there is one. But we talked about public-private partnerships. There may be a way that you could make a partnership out of it in that regard and lower the cost, or there could be a leasing thing. There's all types of permutations that you can do with this kind of funding. But again, unless we have a study that gives us all the data that we can analyze and put it in simple form so you understand what we're getting into, we can't do that, and we don't do that. I think it's premature to have the question at this juncture. I was expecting that the study would have been finished, but it's not. It was supposed to be finished, but was held back, and we don't have the data, and we really need to do it. I understand that we want it now because it's going to be a big election and more people coming out, and it might be beneficial one way or the other. But we just don't have the information. I can't make a good decision of yes, so I have to say no, I do that, but like I said, it's up to you.
Absolutely. Put the burden on the private sector. If it's so profitable, get the city out of the rail business. I agree with that. We were in the rail business to begin with. Why are we now? I mean, people don't realize that we spent almost $65 million on light rail already. That's what we know of in the last 11 years. $13 million in 1999, $6 million in study this year, $40 million on the right-of-way, $5 million for Circuit City building, who knows whatever else. Taking the taxes off the rolls, it goes on and on. And then the burden of the money. We've done this without even the citizens saying we want it. Oh, we already said it, we don't want it once, and here we are again. What kind of responsibility is that? We just don't need it. We can't afford it, and it doesn't work for Virginia Beach. We're a sprawled city, and that's what we are. That's why people like living here. We have a great city. Let's keep it the same.
Well, thank you, Steve, for saying it's a great city. I agree with you on that, too. First of all, I welcome the private sector getting involved, and I foresee that in the future. I don't know if it will handle the whole thing, but I hope the private sector will step up and be a part of what we do. I want to clarify on the $40 million purchase price. The city bought this with the help of the state. And as you know, when the city and state purchase property, we must pay fair market value. And as such, numerous appraisals were done, and the $40 million price was backed up by the appraisals that the state and the city obtained, along with Norfolk Southern, and as such, that's how it was purchased. I'll also tell you, anytime there's a piece of property running dead center through our city, where the rail comes from, that piece of property will be a benefit to the city of Virginia Beach. It was a wise choice.
Okay, last question on light rail. if the majority of voters in November vote no on light rail referendum, will you as mayor permanently table the issue?
I will not permanently do it. I will let time lapse as we had in the last referendum. And if we hear support for it in 10, 15, 20 years from now, I would suggest the opportunity to take it back to the people. But understand that I believe that times do change, and I do think that this referendum has a good opportunity to pass. But if it fails, we listen to the people. But if all of a sudden there gets a big push for light rail from the community and the citizens, 15 or 20 years from now, I would not hold back taking it back to referendum.
Let me respond to the question earlier. First of all, $40 million on a piece of property that the city assessed at $4 million. Did somebody make a mistake? We were not collecting the fair tax we should have been collecting for years? I'm a little confused on, oh, by the way, that property's not buildable. You can't build anything on it. Except a rail. Except a rail. That's most interesting. There was no rush to buy this property right now. In the worst economic times, spending $40 million. Well, last year we're short $40 million for the teachers. You gotta be kidding me here. I think education is way more important in this area than light rail. I just don't think that's
answer
right.
the current question.
Okay.
The current question was, absolutely would I table it? Because tabling means it could be always be reopened again, as far as Robert's rules go. So absolutely would I table it.
Thanks, Wally.
You know, I buy futures. I sure like to have a crystal ball, so I got to know when the cow market's going to go to. And that's kind of like a light rail. If it doesn't pass, of course you have to table it, and that's future. And that brings up another thing. How long would it be? 10 years or table it before we have? I believe in term limits, so I wouldn't have more than 2 terms, so I don't think I'd have to make that decision. But, you know, the mayor brought up a good point and just made a recommend. On that $40 million, that was initiated by Delegate Bob Tater. The money was going to go away, and he went around to all the different delegates, and he went and got a unanimous decision from both the House and the Senate. And I think there was one abstention vote, or maybe one person wasn't there, but that's where the money came from. It comes from the state, and it was Bob Tater that brought it down.
Okay. Is Virginia Beach ready for the big lakes? Headline news on professional sports and entertainment venues. Do you support this effort? And if so, how would you pay for it? Go ahead, Wally.
How would I pay for it? Well, first of all, if we look at the financials for Comcast, I don't stock at one time, their annual, their net income per year is $4.1 billion. So, I mean, $400 million don't mean nothing to those guys. So I can see why they don't build it. I don't know how we would fund it. Of course, it would have to be, we'd have to go leveraged again somehow, get the money and do that. I have reservations about that type of venue coming to this area. There are good points to it. There are bad points. I don't want to scare anybody. That drug trafficking does prevail around NBA games. That does happen. I mean, that's a fact. I'm not scaring you. But there are good points to it also. So you gotta just kind of weigh the good points and the bad points.
Well, the arena deal, I'm absolutely 100% for. I think it's great for the city of Virginia Beach. It would do wonderful things to help bring revenues into the city. It would help some of the problems we may lose as far as federal spending. But what I'm not in favor for is one nickel of taxpayers' dollars going in that arena. Not in the current climate. If it's such a good deal, and Comcast, with all its wealth, should be financing this, we should cut a lease with the people, let them lease the property from us. Let's bring it back on the tax rolls again. That's what I'm in favor of. And by the way, I actually called Kevin Johnson, who played in the NBA. He's actually the mayor of Sacramento. I had a conversation with him about the Sacramento Kings leaving Sacramento. He was a little confused about it because that was news to him and also news to the NBA. So are we going to build an arena without having a team? Build it and they'll come in the worst economic times with our money? I don't think so. Not one nickel of taxpayers' money will go on that project if I'm mayor, because it's just not the right thing to do. Let the private sector take care of it. Let them make the money.
Frankly, I don't know what the answer will be, but I will tell you this, that we're in total agreement that if this arena moves forward, a professional sports team will be part of it, or it will not move forward because the numbers will not work for the arena. I think we're very fortunate that we have Comcast, and you just heard about the financials of Comcast, and Live Nation coming to the city of Virginia Beach looking to invest with us into an arena. The way this arena will be paid for, if I vote for it, will be by the people who use it. That means taxes on the tickets that are sold, the teams that play there, the concerts that play there, the food and beverage that's generated there. And then the key thing is to make sure, I've got these estimates and projections showing that it will promote pretty good revenue from those sources. But I got to make sure that we protect the citizens in case those numbers don't work. And how do we do that? We will go to Comcast and ask them to cover deficiencies or put more cash into the deal. We have a record of providing pretty good business decisions in this city as far as bringing good public and private partnerships.
Okay, hang on to the mic. The following set of questions are on the budget and taxes. Virginia Beach operating budget keeps growing and currently is at or over $2 billion with no real substantial growth in population or increase in inflation. Provide your thoughts on this increase in spending and describe how you as the mayor would deal with a growing budget.
Well, first of all, the city budget has not been growing. Let's make that clear. Go look at your real estate assessments right now, what has been occurred in the last 4 years. They've been decreasing. What's the largest sum of money that we use in the local budget? It's the real estate taxes. And I've got the numbers right here. In 2010, there's a $12 million decrease. 11, $30 million decrease. And 13, 14 million, and then 15. There's been $71 million in less real estate tax in the last 4 years than there were 4 years ago. Okay? Not to mention the LCI, which is the local composite index, that in Richmond they say, hey, the citizens of Virginia Beach can pay more for education. They cut us $30 million last year. These are the type of situations, so please, don't let anyone tell you that the budget is growing. We have been cutting staff, except in police, fire, and teachers.
From my understanding, in the year 2000, our budget was $1 billion. 11 years later, it's $2 billion with no growth. That's pretty big growth to me. I find something most interesting, though, that Will was mentioned earlier that 24/7 Wall Street Journal rated us one of the best run cities, but also Wall Street Journal 24/7 voted us the 4th sickest real estate market in the country. If you minus California, we're number 1 in the country as far as real estate. Did y'all know that? That's not good. 4th sickest real estate market.
That shows you we haven't had the revenue.
But anyway, the point I'm making is our real estates keep dropping down. By the way, in 24/7 Sacramento was number 1. That's where the Kings came from. They were number 1. Bottom line is, we need to start cutting. And that's the bottom line. We need to go through the budget and start cutting. We have to prepare for the future to make sure we can afford core services, fire, police, infrastructure, $1.6 billion of road projects that haven't been funded. We need to make sure we need to do that. And that's first and most important right now to all of us.
Well, sometimes you have to question the budgetary process. And what's important is that we need leadership on the city council to give the guidelines to the budgetary people what we want to do. Of course, with the recommendation of the city manager. But we have to sit down, everything's built on inputs, process, and output. And we have to have that input from city council to define definitively what a core service is. And that's a service that won't be touched. It has to do with public safety, it has to do with education, it has to do with maintenance and the framework that maintains our utilities. And these are the things that are not touched. And education has those things that are discretionary. And public safety has those things that are discretionary. So we have to determine what is necessary, what's discretionary. And when we have them guidelines, Then we send them over to the process, and the budgeteers come around. And then we have an output. And then we have to figure out, well, did they do their real job? But we don't need budgeteers on city council that are going to cut and second guess people that are already doing that job. Thank you. I'm sorry. You got to give me a hope. I don't look up.
Okay, the next question. Last spring of this year, in a split vote, City Council increased the real estate tax rate by 6 cents in order to fully fund the school board's request. Those favoring the increase argued it would be essentially revenue neutral for the city homeowners due to the loss in real estate assessed values. The question is, when real estate assessments increase again, are you as mayor going to lead the effort to lower the tax rate to remain revenue neutral for the homeowners?
There's that crystal ball again. You don't know. Nobody can promise no, there's not going to be a tax increase. And nobody can promise no, there's going to be a tax decrease. It's a time value question where you are and there, specifically there. You have to look at the situation then, what's best for the citizens, what's best for the city and public safety and a good quality of life. Those are questions. That's a subjective question again. You got to know what the situation is at that specific time. What I do say is we have so much revenue diversity in this city, it's ridiculous. Why are we having a garbage fee when it should be in the real estate tax? I can't deduct the the garbage fee from my income tax, and we have a lot of other fees and a lot of other things that are going on that for revenue diversity that should be in the real estate tax so we can get the benefit of a tax deduction of federal taxes.
I will not vote and support any tax increases on the people as long as we haven't cut the fat on the budget. Once we cut all the fat on the budget, then it may be considered. But I don't see that happen. Absolutely will I support that we don't put a burden on you. And I mean, I don't believe, right now, things are tough. Things are tough. And I know it's tough for a lot of people. And I'm not going to put a bigger burden on citizens of this town. It is not necessary. There's plenty of fat to cut, and we're going to continue to cut that fat to make sure that budget is lean, like you and I have to in our households.
I'm happy to tell you the resolution that was passed pertaining to the taxes last spring. It referred to the LCI, which I mentioned a few moments ago. As I said to you, the state looked at our budget that they were sending for schools, and they cut it $30 million. Not to mention the additional runoff we had from the real estate tax, but you know, put all this together, it's a substantial amount of money. But in our resolution, it says when the LCI money comes back, in turn, we will give that money back to the citizens. Right, Lynn?
Okay, the next question refers to the school board. Virginia Pilot reported on the intense heat between the school board and city council on revising the school funding formula. Describe how you would work to bridge the gap between the schools and the city, and would you change the formula? Well,
I'm happy to say that the vice mayor who's here tonight and myself met with the school board chairman and the vice chairman and the superintendent and the city manager and the finance people. We have agreed on a formula, and we're going to take it to council in the next council and school board in the next few weeks. And the school board seems very satisfied with it, and we seem, again, I can only speak for the vice mayor and I right now, but I foresee the council supporting it as well.
I'm more likely to do a needs-based budget, but I'm also not on the school board, and I'm not running for the school board, so I want to work with the school board members to make sure they're properly funded. I think it's one of the most important things we can do is educate our children, so I'll do whatever we can to make sure our children are properly educated with the money that we have.
Yeah, funding the schools, since it's separate and they don't have taxing authority, it has to be need-based. These fancy formulas based on different revenue streams is just best guess at anything. You don't know, you need a crystal ball to figure out what's coming out. What really did disturb me in a way, and I understand the cities, when the school board was frugal with their money and built up a rainy day fund and whatever it was, I hear 20, 40, whatever, there's all kinds of different numbers involved. And the city took it, put it back in the general fund. I didn't really go along with that. I understand it's their money. But you know what happens? It's like in the federal government. If you got a rainy day fund or you got excess, what happens if you know we got to turn it back in? You use it or lose it, and it goes, and it's spent through. It's not a good idea.
The next question, RK, start off. The city is considering supporting and funding another 14-story tower in town center. Please provide your thoughts on the purpose of the tower and your position on this effort for another public-private partnership.
We're $60 million short for next year's budget already, and we want to put another $19 million into something we do not need. You've got to be kidding me here. That's my answer. There's absolutely no way. No way.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we want to take the tax burden off the homeowner, we must continue to make sound investments in this city. Town Center is a fine example where we have net in the last year $3 to $4 million going to the general fund without coming to you asking for it to be taxed on your home. We got a track record there that is very, very good. We are going to put in a total of $18 million for a parking ramp and $1 million to doing streetscapes, of which will be paid for from the TIF and from the special tax district. Don't forget, people that own real estate over there pay 45 cents more per hundred than you do on your home. That's twice what you pay. And that's how some of those improvements are paid for. And I venture to say to you that if you look across the country, you don't find many partnerships that have worked that well. I'm delighted that we have got 350 jobs coming at $75,000 a year. We can sit here and talk, we want these type of jobs, but you got to figure out a way to get them, and we've got them.
Well, I'm glad to hear the people in Town Center are paying premium on their tax and their real estate tax. Unfortunately, that money seems to be going back into the TIF fund and don't go into the general fund and doesn't support the services that we get. It's another erection that these people want. I mean, you know, it's another building. They want to buy the garage. They've done it before. I mean, it's small potatoes now, $35 million or whatever it is. But what's really important, and you got to understand this, and I found this out from the cab, you find a lot of stuff out from cab drivers. And you know, down at Town Center, first of all, my friend Don Weeks, he pointed this out to me. There isn't a playground down there. Do you know if you want a kid, teach a kid how to ride a bike, you can't do it down there? Did you know that last night they had 4 mounted patrol, they had 6 people, excuse me, they had 2 mounted patrol, 4 bicycle guys, there was 4, 6, and 2. Mounted patrol, bicycle guys, and squad cars running around Town Center. You got that around here?
This would not be a candidate forum if the common question wasn't asked, and I'm sure you probably heard it a million times, but the citizen wanted to hear it again. Do you promise not to raise the real estate taxes? Yes or no? We'll start with Wally.
That's an impossible question. I won't answer that question because I don't have a crystal ball. If it needs to be, it goes. If it doesn't, no.
I will not raise real estate taxes as long as there's fat in the budget. And I don't see that we need to raise the real estate tax. I think we can do a better job supporting small businesses and generate more revenue so we don't have to raise the taxes.
If a tax increase is needed, I would support it in order to protect the quality of life in this great city.
Okay, that ends the question, and we'll move into the closing remarks. They will be, we got some time left, so there will be 5-minute closing remarks. So if you can shift gears and take advantage of the 5 minutes for your closing remarks. And we'll start off with Will.